Hi, it's us, Toulouse and Kat, and this is Beyond What's Said, the show that explores the hidden dynamics of conversation, confidence, and how we connect with each other.
And today we're going to be talking about the anatomy of fear in public speaking, particularly the type of self-talk we tell ourselves before we step on stage or the immediate moments after that really determines the trajectory of our success. And so if you're tired of being bound by the crippling fear of public speaking, this episode's for you.
Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel so you can take back control of communication. Let's get into it. You're an aging millennial, aren't you?
Yes, I am definitely slowly but surely being okay with that fact.
Aging millennial moment. Do you know the song My Own Worst Enemy by Lit?
Actually, no. So maybe I'm not as aging as you are.
Just different scenes, different musical genres, I guess. No, Lit was one of these, my God, I want to say like a pop rock, pop punk. I mean, it's hard to kind of categorize, but they were this, late 90s, early 2000s band. They had a few hits. And one of them was a song about getting so plastered, so trashed that you wake up in the morning and your car is in the front yard. You're sleeping with your clothes on.
I hope so.
Well, yeah, exactly. And then you also came through the window, but the girl you like is gone, right? Putting all that aside, I do like the title of the song, My Own Worst Enemy, because I do think at the end of the day, we always are our own worst enemies, our own worst critics. Yeah, I think that's really the crux of the show today is how to manage that internal critic so that you don't go overboard with negative self-talk.
Yeah.
And also understanding why we are our own worst enemies. Like you're probably thinking right now, oh my God, yeah, I can't stand myself. I can't stand anything I say, I write. And there are like real reasons behind that are worth exploring.
So just because I've never heard that song, could you just enlighten my ears?
It's going to be so bad, so cringe. The chorus is like, please tell me why my car is in the front yard and I'm sleeping with my clothes on. Something like that. But then the chorus is like,
That's not bad.
and it's a good song.
Okay, all
Love
right.
Lit. Shout out to Lit. If you're watching, please.
Please.
But yeah.
All right, that's pretty good. All right, so you're saying that we are our own worst enemy and that we are also our own worst critic. Now, I think that is something that a lot of people feel, but they don't quite know what's going on.
Yeah.
There's a saying like people would rather die than to do public speaking.
Yeah. I've heard variations on that, like 1,000 knives plunged through me. But yeah, people hate public speaking.
They do.
People hate being out there, vulnerable.
And that's the thing. A lot of people actually can do, actually everyone can do public speaking, much like I hear you say this a lot. So I can never sing, but you can sing, like you just sang for us. And, but that's the thing. A lot of times it starts with what kind of narrative are we telling ourselves? Not to be cheesy or anything, but I love the quote, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. It's a quote by Henry Ford. It's like the type of self-talk we tell ourselves on a daily basis really matter. And I feel like that is more the root that needs to be addressed rather than only focusing on the externals. Like, there's more than plenty of public speaking tips and rules that you can find online.
Yeah.
And people break it down and all that stuff, like the 3-3-3 rule or the 5-5-5 rule or the, when you package it in some kind of number framework, it seems so easy and doable. But then how many times have you found yourself being like, that seems super easy, I'm going to use that in my next talk. And then you get on and you're like,
Well, and that's the thing, right? Much like you would watch an elite athlete or someone on YouTube do something really impressive and you try to replicate that yourself and it might not happen, it might fall flat, or tips and tricks from top performers that you want to apply to your own situation. And again, that doesn't work because the context isn't quite the same.
Yeah.
And not to say that, well, you're not elite and you need to become elite. No, it's more like our neurophysiology, our kind of neuropsychology is so important here. Because first of all, our brains are very vulnerable to negativity bias.
Yeah.
We have this whole predictive machinery in our brains that really looks for the negative, looks for bad things. We evolved to scan the environment at all times to look for danger. Danger and threats, that has a lot more salience to the human brain. So ultimately, our brains default to negativity bias. So that's already hard. And then, there's the other kind of experience dependent part where like, okay, I've gone through my entire life thinking that I'm crap at public speaking and
Mm,
kind of telling myself the same thing over and over again. And so inside your brain, there's like all these like well paved roads, all
yeah.
these connections on a neuron level where
The
you're like,
paved
I
road
am
is
crap, you
that's
know?
right, and it's like that paved road is so crucial. Paving a road doesn't just happen overnight. Well,
No,
it
no.
might in certain places.
In Montreal, like you can, the potholes.
Will be like 10 years, you
Yeah,
know?
well, yeah, exactly. No, yeah, Montreal, the potholes take 10 years.
But, it's like it's something that is built brick by no, they don't they don't use brick
They,
for
they,
roads. Clearly, I am an expert at paving
yes,
roads. No, but
they
it's
probably did at some
but,
point.
like mixing the concrete and all that stuff, it
Mm,
takes a process
yeah,
of repeated layering down the layers. And that's the same with our brain. We keep telling ourselves these narratives. And so when you've like
mm,
paved a particular path
yeah,
and that's set in stone, it doesn't matter if you add in another pole or a sign that says, beware of this or don't do that.
yeah,
It's going to help a little bit, but it's not really going to change the fundamental structure.
yeah,
So unless you basically dig that thing up and then you repave
yeah,
a particular path that you want,
yeah.
you know.
No, I think, yeah, exactly. Telling yourself things that, boost the self esteem, that boost your sense of competency. Like, okay, I can do this. I will do this. I have done this, right? The
Mhm.
more data up here, successful outcomes and high stakes interactions or, public speaking or whatever, that's crucial. That's critical because now you can actually tell yourself a different narrative
Yeah.
based on what you've actually experienced. And
Mhm.
so ultimately, your self talk, if it doesn't quite align with those successful experiences or outcomes, or if you're just persistently telling yourself, something very negative and very kind of undermining,
Yeah.
yeah, it's very tough to kind of walk into any YouTube video, any kind of reel online and, oh, look at these tips and tricks, right? And I'm just going to try to apply this.
Yeah.
But that core anxiety, self doubt, all of that hasn't been addressed. And also just understanding, again, the core neurophysiology behind being a human being. Yeah, you are going to be your own worst critic a lot of times. Like it's normal to be doing this.
Well, before we jump into that, it's like you talked about that kind of feeling
Mm,
of anxiety and nervousness and all that stuff.
mm,
I think there's a misconception
mm.
that it goes away. That,
Yeah.
when you have made it or, those top performers or those who do really well, they don't feel anxiety
Mm,
or nervousness or doubt or
yeah.
all that stuff.
Mm,
Or that when we talk about like, you make sure you're auditing your self-talk, whether it's
yeah.
negative or not. And there's this misconception that top performers don't
Yeah.
ever speak negatively to themselves. They
Yeah.
do.
Mm,
And they just find a way to manage that. They kind of, it's almost like they've come to terms that it doesn't ever go away. And that is kind of the first step.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I've even heard from the martial arts world really interesting interviews where the world famous MMA champion, one of the greatest of all time, George St. Pierre, talks about just the absolute like dread and anxiety and nerves that he felt before a fight. There was another jujitsu athlete. He said something great. He's like, I hate competitions.
Mm,
I hate the nerves and showing up, having to wait around for your matches to start. And you're
mm,
just kind of like, oh, right, that anticipation.
yep.
I actually enjoy the training, but the competition part isn't really my favorite.
Mm,
And I was like, wow, these are top level people that have
mm,
been in all sorts of situations where they show mastery, they show elite level moves and performance. And yet they talk about the nerves just being there
yeah.
to the point where it's like physically ailing them.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wow, that's actually really, that's important to know.
Well, for me, it was like one of the reels that really stuck with me was when I saw an interview with Betty White, the late Betty
Oh,
White.
like beta, yeah, of course.
Yeah, and so she was like well into her well, I think she was like in her 80s at that
Mm,
point.
yeah,
And I think she was on the either the Graham Norton show or like a different interview.
yeah,
And she said even at the ripe age, she still gets nervous.
yeah,
And to me, when I saw that, I was kind of shocked. I was
mm,
like, you've done this your entire career.
yeah,
You've become so successful. And what do you mean you still get nervous?
mm,
And the
mm,
same thing when I saw like Meryl Streep's interview where she talks about like, I didn't know I could do this or
yeah,
what. And I'm just like, what? It was for me a relief and very encouraging because, I still think that I'm a bit of a failure for still feeling nervous and I'm never going to be those
yeah,
top performers because, oh my God, I still feel scared.
yeah,
But the truth is that they still feel scared too.
Yeah.
They just learn to manage it and then move forward with that. And so now I use that as a blueprint
Yeah.
and an encouragement to be like, hey, this is normal. I
Yeah.
need to embrace that.
Yeah, and I think that reframing that nervousness as a kind of excitement, it's everything. That's something I've learned more recently in athletic competitions. Like, okay, I'm getting that kind of anticipation of how we're going to do, what's going to happen, the butterflies, and so on. But for me, like, no, I'm currently excited and passionate about what I'm about to engage in,
Mhm.
and this is a growth opportunity, a learning opportunity. As much as on the surface it sounds kind of cheesy and very like, okay, I'm just going to take the anxiety and just relabel it or just kind of reframe it. But it actually helped me calm down
Mhm.
considerably in the
Mhm.
lead up to my last competition, my last jujitsu competition.
Mm.
And I feel like physically very nervous, like, oh my
Mm.
God. And then what if the guy does this or that? Right.
Yeah.
And then I just, no, this is like whatever the outcome, we're learning, we're growing. More importantly, you care about this. You put
Yeah.
a lot of preparation, you put a lot of thought into this. And so this is why you feel this way right now.
Well, this ties into our topic back in episode 3, where
Mm.
we talked about the GPS analogy.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like if we don't see these performances as a mean, not a means to an end, like an end all be all
Mm.
kind of thing, like, it's detrimental, whatever
Yeah,
the consequence is,
yeah.
then when we see it more as a learning opportunity to collect data
Mm.
so that we can recalibrate the next time
Yeah,
we do this, because hopefully this won't be the last time you do a
yeah,
competition.
yeah.
Hopefully this won't be the last time you do a presentation.
Mm.
But with each rep, you become better and better because you collected data and you're able to
Mm.
recalibrate.
Yeah.
What does become detrimental is if you get stuck in that
Mm.
mentality of like, oh my God, that was terrible. That was so bad.
Mm.
And you never learn anything from it and you just never try.
But, at the same time, I think that there's something about it that's it's very human, right? Because we're worried about outcomes. We're
Yeah.
worried about failure.
Hmm.
It goes back to negativity bias. We worry about threats to our ego, threats to our physical selves. So we default to like, oh my God, I'm gonna fail. This is gonna be terrible or whatever. But I think there's also like on a more subtle level, we do this because we want to lessen the blow of the negative outcome. It's like I remember wanting to get X or Y academic job or applying for grants, and then you're like, oh, I probably didn't get it
Mm,
because it's easier if I just assume I didn't get it that
yeah.
way. When the bad news comes, you're like, oh, well, told me so.
That is so common. Like I find myself doing that all the time
Mm.
where I was like, oh, don't have expectations that you will get it or
Mm.
do really well so that when you do get it, you're like, oh, that's like a pleasant
Mm.
surprise. You find extra fries on in the bottom of the bag kind of thing.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
I like to use that analogy because it's
Mm.
always like a nice surprise, like, oh,
Yeah.
extra fries. But at the same time, it's not really, when I keep doing that, I make that part of my ritual or my habit in the way that I think, I have noticed that it doesn't always work. And
Yes.
in fact, it diminishes my energy and my output
Yeah.
because now I'm being more conservative. I'm
Yeah.
holding back. And so when it's time for me to present, say that it's an audition,
Sure.
I know that I need to give it everything I got. But because in my mind, I'm already planting that seed, don't get too excited
Yeah.
because what are the chances of you getting this role? It's probably 1 in a million. Look at all the people outside.
Yeah.
Look at who you are. You're not even part of equity.
Mm.
You're just some non-equity person lining up in the firewalls.
What's equity?
Equity is like actors union.
Oh, yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, so you're not if you're in the union, then you get, like, your special waiting room with, like,
Mm.
AC, and then we're, like, lining up on the benches along the side near, like, the fire escape, and I remember one time, we were just sitting there all, like, crammed up in our little bench. I was lucky enough to even get, like, a slither of a bench, right? And then some people, they're done auditioning, they come out, the people from union, and, there are a lot of really great people in the equity realm, but like there are also some that are just not so pleasant.
Not so humble.
Yeah, I think they're in every industry. There's always
Yeah,
like
for sure.
good people, and then you have ones who are just a bit snobby. So everyone who's done auditioning, they come out, they have to pass through us to go downstairs to exit. And they were being very loud. They're very excited because they just finished off their audition. They're chit-chatting really loudly. Meanwhile, all of us have been waiting for hours. We're just trying our best to stay calm. Like you talk about like being nervous, trying
Mm,
to prepare our minds.
mm,
So we're preparing, we're silent, we're talking quietly. One person from like kind of two-person down just goes, could you do you guys mind just being a little bit more quiet? We're all just trying to get ready. And we just saw them just go, let's go. We just got shushed by non-X. And we just all felt so terrible about
mm,
ourselves.
mm,
But that's just a fun side story that, we were talking about what's equity, right? But it's so true. Like we talk about preparing the mind. We talk about not overhyping ourselves up
mm.
in fear of disappointment.
Yeah.
And that's such a real thing. So I think it's like, how do you strike that balance between always being
Mm,
overly optimistic
sure.
and kind of like not doing it.
Well, I think there's an important thing that you're referring to. If you protect your ego by defaulting to, oh my God, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail, then the outcome is successful. You're probably often going to wind up saying, well, I got lucky this time around. I scored some
Mhm.
points on the board and,
Yeah,
maybe next time around it'll be different.
yeah,
I think that just adds to your self-doubt. It
that's right.
adds to a distorted narrative
Mm.
where you're never truly good because of your abilities, because of what you bring to the table. It's always a fluke. It's always some
Yeah.
sort of like, ah,
It's
you know,
never grounded in that you are actually capable.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that it's critical that we tell ourselves stories that are about, okay, there is hardship, there is failure, there is adversity, such as that. But ultimately, you're not treating these experiences as, growth moments, as learning opportunities. So I think it's really important that failure gets, reframed, gets rebranded, and that you actually find a framework up here to remind yourself that it's not a competition against, well, it is a competition against others in some way, shape, or form. You
Yeah.
are competing for a job, you are competing for a role, but at the same time, like, and this is a wonderful concept from the great book Courage to be Disliked. If you treat everything like a competition, then if you do win, if you do get those successful outcomes, you're attached to rankings, you're
Mhm.
attached to a podium,
Yeah.
and even under conditions of success, you fear getting knocked off the podium,
Mhm.
right? And maybe those actors you were referring to who were kind of all high and mighty, right? Maybe they're coming from a place of big egos and haha, like how dare these non
Non-X.
the non-X shush us. But for them, I'm not sure where they're at now. Hopefully they're successful and they're moving on with great roles and great things. But it's like, yeah, that success begets success, and then you get
Mhm.
caught in I believe, the success trap here,
Yeah.
right? It's like now you anticipate more success, and you
Yeah.
get even more anxious about maintaining your standings in
That's
the
right.
ranking. So you have to strike, like you said, that balance. Like too much negativity undermines the self, and
Mhm.
too much positivity, you might sound like an asshole, like kind of inflated
Yeah.
ego,
And that
or
and also just like you said, too much success, then you set yourself up for more pressure to
mm,
maintain that. And
mm,
what's gonna happen when inevitably you're
you do
going
lose. Yeah,
to lose out or become second
yeah,
to whoever the new person is?
yeah,
How are you going to handle that? If
yeah,
you don't first, again, going back to self-talk, to going back to what kind of narrative are you
mm,
prepping yourself? What kind of road are you
yeah,
paving for these kind of moments? And like you talk about what do you do when you actually hit a particular benchmark or a
mm,
summit or some sort? I remember watching this YouTube video of Ryan Holiday
mm.
talking about his process of writing his fourth book.
It-
There was one part where he was talking about, yeah, well, I just hit, I think it was like 1 million subscribers or something like that, where I just, he like hit a particular milestone, and he was just like, so I got this, and what's next? Well, back to work. And that really sat with me. That really resonated with me because it's
mm,
like we all think that wow, hitting like 1 million subscribers
mhm,
or like hitting a particular benchmark. If only I get this award, or if only I get to this level of, or climb the corporate ladder, I get to
mm.
manager, general manager, whatever, then I will be happy. Then all my problems will go away. And then what?
Mm,
And then
yeah,
so from the people who have made it, who are very successful, they say back to work. You
Yeah.
go back and do what you
Yeah.
normally do. And that brings back to what I wanted to say, like after hearing all that,
Mm,
is how do you pave that road? Well, don't focus on the result.
mm.
You have to focus on the process.
Yeah. No,
If you're
absolutely.
focusing on how do I grow and learn and adjust and pivot along the way, the results are kind of like they're the bonus.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think again, it kind of matches the neurobiology of like being a human being because you're talking about getting after something, and
Mm,
that's dopamine. So the dopamine is the, neurotransmitter of chasing after something. It's seeking rewards. And of course, there is always a moment where you get your reward and you're flush with positive emotions and great feelings, but then you kind of need to reset, right? And like endlessly scrolling on a phone is a terrible way to get dopamine hits,
yeah.
as a lot of people have pointed out just about anywhere now. But also like having long-term effortful activities and hobbies that have some sort of goal or set of like smaller goals, that's a way to really get your dopamine kind of kicking into high gear. But
Yeah.
not just that, like your hedonic adaptation, like your adaptation, your ceiling for like happiness changes and evolves, right?
Mm.
You think that the ultimate destination is this role, publishing a book, hitting a million, but then you get there and it's kind of like okay,
And then what?
and then what? And so
Mm.
the then what is getting back to the process, getting back to building those systems, not to reach higher and higher heights, because then, yeah, then you get just caught in like, okay, well, now I just need to move the ceiling a
Yeah.
little bit. And then the ceiling forever just kind of changes
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you're chasing after, God knows what. It's more like loving the process,
Mm.
endlessly loving the process and using that to not to silence the inner critic, but to temper the inner critic, to
Mm.
tell yourself, like, hey, I got a lot of time ahead of me where I will be refining so many different aspects of whatever it is, whether it's like public speaking, for example.
Yeah.
For me, recently, it was graduation at school where I work at, and the head of secondary. I've always really loved his speeches, like just his
Mm.
stage presence, the
Yeah.
way he's got a British accent, which kind of adds flair to it, but his cadence, his presence, just the way he writes speeches, and I'm like, man, I like that. I want to get to that, right? And as much as sometimes I feel so in command of the classroom, there are moments where I get on the assembly stage
Yeah.
and I catch myself like, oh, I'm kind of nervous. I'm actually kind of jittery.
Mm.
Or doing a workshop in front of parents,
Mm.
change of audience. Now I'm dealing with parents, not with students. And that gets me kind of jittery in a different way.
Yeah.
So I was watching, my head of secondary deliver that graduation speech, and I was like, yeah, I got a long way to go. I like that. I want to get to that point where I can kind of pull something like that off.
That's right. And I think that's really important. So it's like if we only look at these successful or these people that we admire as
Mm,
like, oh, we will never get to that point,
mm,
then yeah, you won't ever get to that point. But if you see that as what are they doing? Like
mm,
coming from a place of curiosity rather than just being like that kind of defeatist, kind of like, oh, well, that's because they're them and I'm me. And
yeah.
this definitive and set in stone way of
Mm,
thinking. No, we're very malleable. Like
yeah.
humans are very well, not just human, animals
Yeah.
are very adaptive. And so if we operate from a place of I can adapt,
Mm,
then you start looking at them as blueprints of like, all
yeah.
right, what are the things that they're doing right that I could
Yeah.
start doing?
For
And
sure.
then you need to put in the reps. You need to actively do it.
Mm,
We have mentioned that in our last episode as well. Like you
mm,
have to put in the reps to find your style.
yeah.
Because whatever it is that the head of secondary did may not 100% copy paste onto you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
it's like the classic, Olympic weightlifting. You coached it, you did it, I did it, and it's like, don't go watch the Olympians throw the weights around. Like, oh yeah, but the Chinese lifters do it like this, and then the Bulgarians do it like that. It's like, no,
Yeah.
like you. First of all, like yeah, you might want to look at model exemplars
Yeah.
and draw inspiration from that. But like at the end of the day, work with your own body, your own parameters, with what your coaches know you're
Well, that's the
capable
thing
of.
is that as a coach, I see this all the time. I get clients of all different shapes and sizes,
Mm,
but I'm teaching the same lifts, the
mm,
snatch, the clean and jerk, and of course, everything that builds up towards that.
yeah.
And you literally cannot go, just do it like this, exactly like how I do it, or
Yeah.
look at, like, what's his name? Dmitry Klokov?
Dmitry Klokov,
Yeah, or like look at, Liu
Hiroshima.
Xiaozhen,
Yeah.
and just copy that. No, you can't
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
everyone's, femur length to like their torso to
Yeah.
leg ratio
Exactly.
or arm ratio are wildly different. And that's
Yeah.
going to change the angle in which how you lift more
Yeah.
efficiently. And so it really is like a good reminder that as much as
Mm.
we can admire those who we like, we cannot be them and we shouldn't be them. But
Yeah.
there's always something that we can maybe extract.
Well, yeah, we cannot be them, maybe right now, and maybe
Mm,
in the distant future, you could become like them in some way, right? But I think it's like, I think for me, those exemplars, if you want to call them that, they're
mm,
they're great for driving up, passion and interest. Like for me, I love watching elite level athletes or elite level speakers. Like I like that; it's inspiring, and I kind of want to replicate some version of that. But I think this is like a really great lesson from some of the literature on building better habits. A lot of these books, they talk about if you want sticky habits, right? If you want to like have like all this stuff going on in your life that's optimizing your health, your intellect, and just your social life, surround yourself with people that have similar habits,
mm,
but also people that are kind of operating at a level that you can handle.
mhm.
Like, you want to have mentors and you want to have role models, and it's good to have those high level exemplars, but working within the confines of people you can relate to,
Yeah.
that are also engaging in said habit or that are pursuing similar goals, and it's like a level of achievement that's realistic. I think that's also critical.
I think that's a very good point. Like finding your people, starting with understanding yourself
Yeah.
too, like self discovery, like what am I, who am I kind of thing.
Mm.
And that's a lifelong journey, right?
It
But
is.
along the way, it's not saying that you have only one set of people that you're allowed to hang out with.
Yeah.
You and I are both like that. Growing up in high school, that was one of the things that we bonded over
Mm.
is that high schools we talk about, well, which clique were you part of?
Mm.
Were you part of the popular group, the jocks, the
Mm.
nerdy ones, or the loners or whatever? And we both kind of said we were both floaters.
Yeah.
And so we evolve depending on what stage in life we are, or what stage.
Isn't a float sorry. Isn't a floater like a
A
like
ghost?
no, no, no. A floater is like a piece of poop just kinda hanging out in the toilet that hasn't been I don't know.
It
So,
takes forever to like flush. You
yeah.
waste so much water and it just won't go down.
Yeah, one of those. Well, we're not that. I wanted to say like social chameleon or I don't know, some kinda
I guess,
fun.
yeah. Either way, what I'm trying to get at is that with each stage in life, you're going to find your set of people, and that comes with knowing yourself first. And then you can really see like, okay, this group of people, they're a good influence on me, or I
Mm.
can bounce my ideas off of them, or I can learn something
Yeah.
from them. Because if you just blindly follow what's popular,
Mm.
then you're going to find yourself hitting a wall and being very frustrated
Yeah.
why you can never
Yeah.
be like them.
But also, like, going back to the inner critic, having a network of people that hold you accountable, that give you constructive feedback. Again, surrounding yourself by people who give you that space to grow and to learn, not just that space for validation and like, oh my god, that was so great and you're
That's
awesome.
right.
And it's hard to kind of find your people, but I think that you know your inner critic will forever remain deeply negative and just deeply undermining if there's no one around you to kind of tell you, yeah, okay, that was great, but
Mm,
this can be improved upon, or maybe this requires a little bit of fine tuning,
yeah.
like too many filler words when you do public speaking, or you move around too much.
Mm.
Like this was something that no one ever told me until she started, like,
It's me.
exactly. She started telling me, "Man, you move around way too much and it's distracting the hell out of your audience. You're kind of going pacing back and forth." This is on like a bigger stage type
Mm,
of venue.
mm,
And I wanted to like emulate what my PhD mentor used to do, which is kind of slowly walk through and meander across the lecture hall, and then like he had a very kind of casual, relaxed demeanor, and he would kind of like stand up, lecture, slowly walk down the stairs, keep lecturing, sit down on the stage. It was very kind of public intellectual philosopher but with relaxed vibes. And I really like that. And I
Mm,
think I was trying to kind of replicate that, and it wasn't quite working. And you're like, okay, you need to be more disciplined in your movement. And instead of having people that just tell me, no, you're great, right? Like I had someone kind of sit me down and be like, hey, listen, I noticed this particular little quirk about you.
yeah.
And that's important. Not only does the inner critic need people to actually tell you like, hey, yes, you are right, but here's why you're right.
Yeah.
And I think that if you don't have those people around you, you're just criticizing yourself.
Well, that's the thing is that self-criticism can be a downward spiral. So if you're telling yourself this narrative that what I did was terrible and I missed this note, I missed that thing, I walked too fast, I talked too fast, I didn't look good, etc. You're in this echo chamber of negativity.
Mm,
And having people who you can trust and know that they speak the truth to you,
yeah,
is so important because if when they say, "Hey, no, I thought that was great."
yeah,
And you know that it's not
yeah,
because they just always give you like this badge of
yeah,
approval, being like, everything you do is great.
yeah,
Then you will take that to heart and be like, oh, maybe I was being a little too hard on
yeah,
myself. So it is kind of like both ways. It's like you want people who can point out what you're not
mm,
doing right, because you may think that, oh, I'm just trying to emulate my supervisor, but turns out your energy was taking you much faster than you intended.
yeah,
But then also having people who you trust who can tell you, hey, you did great there,
yeah,
and this is why.
yeah,
And that's going to help you start reframing what you say to yourself.
yeah. And also remember, the people that are watching you perform, that are watching you speak or do whatever it is that you're doing, they don't know everything about like what you scripted, what you
Yeah.
prepared. Remember, like you literally prepared for this thing. You probably over prepared, like, many people will do that.
Yeah.
And so you go through the actual performance, you deliver the talk or the interview unfolds a certain way. And then you're playing back in your head every single little micro moment. And you're like, oh, that was awkward. That was goofy.
Yeah.
This or that, whatever. And then, you know, the people who actually watched you, they weren't there with you
Well,
preparing.
let me share a funny story from when I played in Miss Saigon. And so there's one scene where I'm singing and I'm supposed to do a costume change on stage
Mm,
while in the middle of a song. And so what happens is that the set is supposed to have this basket of clothes
mm,
come out with the set underneath my bed. And what I would do is go behind this barrier
yeah.
while singing and then quickly change and then come out in a different outfit. And so one night I went back, I looked down and there was no basket. And continuing singing, I look up in fear. I see the stage manager in the wings, like that's behind the curtains and backstage doing this, just eyes wide open going, "Oh shit." And I'm like singing and I'm looking at him going, "Help," because I'm about to finish my song. I cannot go out with the same outfit
Yeah,
because
exactly.
then the show wouldn't make sense. You see him just running at full speed around the back of the stage. It was a big stage as well. So it was a lot of running. And then good thing was there was another set that was coming out.
Mm,
And so he ran to the other side.
mm.
And then as the set was already leaving, it was already on stage, you would have seen, if you were in the audience, you would have seen a little basket just went, shoo, and then it like came in with the
The
set.
little moving
Just a
basket.
little like basket. And I was like, oh my God. So safe. But you know what? The audience wouldn't have
Yeah,
known, even if the basket didn't show up and I came out
yeah.
and I maintained my composure. I continued singing and I waited until it was time for me to get off
Mm,
stage to quickly change. The audience, most of them wouldn't have caught that,
yeah,
especially if they've never seen the show. They wouldn't have even known unless you brought it up.
yeah,
And so that's the same thing with like what you're saying is that a lot of people they go up and
yeah,
they freak out over every little thing that they miss.
exactly.
But if you don't freak out, a lot of times the audience don't even realize because they don't know what you wrote.
Yeah, it's like I had a similar moment, not myself, but one of my students. We have a lot of bands at our school, so they form lot rock groups or pop groups, and then they perform, on in the MFH and in our like little assembly hall. And I'm like really fixated on the moment, like, oh, this is impressive. I
Mhm.
definitely wasn't doing this at their age. And I remember the singer, she's doing her thing, And then I walk up to her after, I'm like, "Hey, great job, this went really well. It sounded awesome." She's like, "Oh, I missed this note." And I was like, zero moment in which I picked up on that.
Yeah.
And I think it's because all of us on the opposite end watching the performance, like,
Yeah.
we are not privy to her preparation and her
Absolutely.
band and everything that they did. So again, that mismatch between performer expectations and like what's happening inside their head versus audience
Yeah. Like
expectations.
self-perception
So,
versus reality, really.
yeah,
Yeah, as a performer myself, I've definitely experienced so much of that dissonance of like, oh, I thought I was
yeah,
terrible. And then I look out and there's like a standing ovation where people are like, that was great and all
yeah,
that stuff. And then so it took a long time for me to start again, rewiring my
mm,
self-talk to be
yeah,
like, "Hey, I just all I need to do is do my best
yeah,
and stay calm." And, not only will that help
mm,
my own nerves, I'll be more connected to the performance, I'd be more connected to the audience, and I end up having fun. And
yeah,
the audience are having more fun than
yeah,
if I were to be monitoring my every move,
yes,
every single second of my time on
yeah.
stage.
And that's it. You use the word rewire, and that's actually the title of a great book by Nicole Vignola, a great neuroscientist who wrote this entire book about the brain's capacities for rewiring and reshaping that kind of self-talk, right?
Yeah.
And she actually uses the pavement, the paving of roads analogy at one point as well.
Mhm.
And it's great because I really do think that we severely underestimate that power. And
Mm.
like, so whether it's, your little inside the basket, I have the basket, like this little
It's
tiny
yeah,
basket.
it's the
Um,
most hilarious thing.
so that, or students of mine that are performing on stage in their bands, I'm not just kind of giving you empty validation. I genuinely thought that was impressive. And here's
Mm.
why, right?
Mhm,
And this is
mhm.
the thing, always when you want to tell someone, reassure them that they did great, tell them specifically what they did
Yeah,
great.
that's right.
And the person on the receiving end is going to be like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. So at least they can take that data point with them and be like, here's what I can do right. And internally, I know I did these
Yeah,
things wrong.
yeah.
So here's where I can improve.
Yeah, we always talk about like actual data that can help recalibrate the next
Yeah.
time we do something. But when you give feedback, we teach this to our students all the
Mm,
time. It's like, how do you give effective feedback?
yeah.
You can't just say that was really good
Yeah.
or that was great. No, you have to say specifically what.
Yeah.
That way, it becomes a valid feedback or
Mm,
data for
yeah.
them to actually use.
Yeah, absolutely. And by data, we mean experience, really.
Mm.
It's like your brain makes predictions off of the experience inputs. And it's like, okay, this was a positive experience
Yeah,
with these particular positives and these, moments or areas for, future improvement. And again, it gives you that balanced sense of a self that is definitely not perfect, definitely not complete in its ability to do whatever skill you're working on, but is going in the right direction and has actionable things it
mm.
knows to work on, as opposed to a self that's just so anxious you're full of ego because
Yeah,
you fear getting knocked off
yeah,
the podium, or so full of like self-doubt that even if you have those successful outcomes, you're like, oh, that was a fluke,
yeah.
right? So
Exactly. It's
eh,
not grounded in confidence in your
exactly.
capabilities. And so, yeah, our topic today was about the anatomy of fear. And I think like
Mm,
we really broke down kind of what is the anatomy? Well, one of them is your self-talk. What materials are you using to pave the road
mm.
that you want to build?
Up
That's right.
here, yeah.
And so I think that starts with recognizing that these nerves, this agonizing kind of like ugh, butterflies in your stomach, it
Mm,
doesn't ever go away,
no,
even at very top high level people. And so
absolutely.
being kind of at peace with that and learning, finding ways to kind of manage that is so important.
Yeah.
And then you talked about how, when we get to a certain summit,
Mm,
what do you do with that? And so again, letting go of our ego
yeah,
and focusing on the process. So when you have extra fries in the bag moments, like such as a very positive result, you celebrate and then you get right back into the process
yeah,
because you're focused on the process. That's the point and
exactly.
learning journey. Being able to label that will help you diminish the feeling of fear.
Mm.
Because a fear, a lot of times, fear of the unknown.
Yeah, exactly.
And so when you're able to label that and be like, I'm just nervous. And right now my body's getting ready
Mm.
to prepare for something that I genuinely care about because I
Yeah.
put in a lot of work and preparation
Yep.
and I want to do well here.
Yeah.
And this is an opportunity for me to practice, put in the reps
Mhm.
so that I can become even better speaker
Mm.
or performer, or whatever it is that I
Mm.
want to become.
Exactly.
So labeling that. And then another one that you talked about is the inner self critic.
Yeah, so in terms of the inner self-critic, first, you have to realize that you are living in your own head and you've done a bunch of things for preparation and other reasons that no one else will notice or will see. So obviously, it's good to be hyper aware of what sort of talk you're about to deliver, what kind of performance you have to give on stage or in any kind of athletic,
Mm,
endeavor. But learning to surround the inner critic with people who
mm,
will give you feedback to add a little bit of texture, who will not silence the inner critic, but give you some concrete, actionable things to work on,
mm.
as opposed to that negativity spiral that you're talking about,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
First of all, like, labeling fears, that was number one, right? Labeling fears and understanding what nerves are, that's important. And I think accepting that ultimately the negativity and the fear, it's the default setting of being a human being,
mm,
and kind of like normalizing it. Like, look, of course, I'm always going to have doubt. I'm always going to have things I'm particularly worried about. But rather than go down that downward spiral of negativity, you don't silence the inner critic. You get the inner critic to have a much more nuanced or textured approach. And that can only be done if you have people around you that are giving you constructive feedback, not
yeah,
just the validation, the ego boosting, like, while this was great, perhaps this could use some improvement. Or, in the future, maybe you might want to think about certain aspects of your game that would allow you, further success. And also, like, silencing the inner critic is also like, look, I tried. Like, I think there's value in just saying, even if you fail, like, I tried, I actually put myself out there.
yeah,
I was vulnerable and it felt crappy or it was a bad experience, but at least, like, I made an effort to go further than most people.
that's right.
So that's also another way to tell the inner critic, hey, like, being vulnerable, putting yourself out there and
It's a good
exposing
thing.
it's a good thing.
Yeah,
And
because it
then,
builds
yeah.
courage, it builds that kind of signal to the brain that you can do it because you've done it once,
Mm.
you can do it again. But if you never take that step out because you let your inner critic talk you out of it,
Yeah.
then your brain will never learn that you were able to do it in the first place.
Yeah.
And then you never actually grow from there. And so finding that kind of, the support group that will shine a very truthful mirror at you, both the things that you can work on and the
Mm.
things that are actually good that
Yeah.
you may not see. That's super important. And lastly, I think like overcoming that kind of negative bias,
Mm.
right? And so by practicing positive self talk,
Mm.
and I know it sounds really cheesy because it gets thrown around so
Yeah.
much. I think it really is quite
Yeah.
important.
And quite literally, I think saying it out loud is important, creating a bit of a ritual around it. You tell yourself a particular mantra or a particular phrase at certain points in the lead up to it, or while you're in it, if you can. I
Hmm.
mean, maybe not if it's you're in the middle of a talk and you're like, I,
I'm good.
I am good, I'm amazing. Uh,
Everyone's looking like,
like,
who is she talking
what?
to?
So yeah, you really want to try and, like I said, create particular routines around it. We talked about routines and rituals in a previous episode,
Hmm.
and how, like, if you're going to, dress to impress and don on a suit, take care of yourself, you're creating a routine that makes you feel like, I'm a professional, I'm ready to go, I'm ready
Yeah.
to attack this thing. Similarly, if you create a routine around positive self-talk and
Yeah.
positive mantras, it embeds that thinking, like, not just in your mind, but in your entire body, in the environment that you're in. It's this whole preparation thing.
It's the raw
So yeah,
material that you're going to use to pave that road,
exactly.
and it
Yeah.
comes with just daily kind of like
Mm.
collecting those
Yeah.
pebbles,
The
those
the little cobblestone roads,
yeah.
little pew. And this is like, obviously the whole point of the episode about the anatomy of fear. And you obviously, you mentioned Ryan Holiday
Mm,
earlier. You love the Daily Stoic.
yep.
We're big practitioners of stoicism.
Oh,
It's kind of,
it's a meme.
it's a Yes, it's a meme. No, but it's like, we're big fans of
Yeah.
stoicism. It's a big part of just our overall compass, our kind of guiding philosophy. And, it's a bit of it's not the full exact quote, but Seneca's classic, we suffer more from imagination than reality. I think it's, yeah, at the end of the day, there are very real neurobiological reasons why we suffer more from imagination, why we put on this kind of protective armor of
Yeah.
fear, of doubt, of, here comes failure. But we have these powers, and this is the thing about Stoicism, like our powers of thinking and reasoning
Yeah.
can help bust that, can help put us on the track of being a more competent, capable, virtuous person.
Yeah.
And yeah, negativity bias is there, but we have the tools within us to break that cycle and to repave that road,
That's
to
right.
use that analogy.
That's right.
Maybe we can find pave the road. What else? What other analogies kind of sound like a road?
I don't know. Country road. I don't know the lyrics. Anyway, I just thought before we finish, I just thought of like a funny image that I wanted to talk about earlier, but you were, on a roll, so I didn't want to interrupt you.
Mm,
When you said that we're built for like survival, how like we're always looking out for danger and all that
mm.
stuff. I just imagine a rabbit that's like completely different, completely optimistic. Oh, this flower smells nice. Oh, the sun is going and
No,
then just gets eaten.
yeah, no, but it's true, right? The threats to our survival now, they're not that.
All right.
All
Well,
right.
that's all the time we have for today. We'll see you in the next episode.